Here is what is going to happen. Trump will land in Beijing next Thursday. There will be pageantry. There will be a carefully choreographed arrival ceremony designed to project the image of two equal powers meeting on neutral terms. There will be a photo opportunity at the Great Hall of the People. There will be closed-door meetings with Xi Jinping that last precisely as long as both sides agreed they would last. Not a minute more, not a minute less. Both leaders will emerge. Both will claim victory. There will be announcements about soybeans, perhaps jet engines, perhaps a working group on fentanyl, perhaps a joint statement about the importance of stable bilateral relations. And then Air Force One will take off from Beijing Capital International Airport, and absolutely nothing of substance will have changed. That is not pessimism. That is not political bias. That is the assessment of every serious expert who has analyzed the structure of this summit. Drew Thompson, former director for China, Taiwan, and Mongolia in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, said it plainly. I'm skeptical that you'll get any outcomes. Alan Carlson, China expert at Cornell University, was even more direct. The chance of anything of substance emerging from these talks is little more than zero. Not 10%, not 5%, little more than zero. These are not commentators with an agenda. These are people who have spent their careers studying exactly this kind of bilateral engagement. And they are telling you, before the plane lands, before the handshake happens, before the joint statement is read, do not expect anything real. Today we are going to tell you why. Why this summit is structurally, fundamentally, almost mathematically set up to produce theater rather than outcomes. And why understanding that structure is more important than anything either leader will say on camera. My name is Dr. Adrian Cole. This is Empire Signal. Stay with me. Let us start with the most basic question. What does a successful summit actually require? Not pageantry, not photo opportunities, not carefully worded joint statements designed to be interpreted differently by different audiences in different languages. A successful summit requires two things. Both sides must want the same outcome badly enough to pay the price required to achieve it, and both sides must trust that the other side will actually deliver on whatever is agreed. This summit has neither condition. Let us take them one at a time. The first condition, both sides wanting the same outcome badly enough to pay the price. Trump wants three things from Beijing. He wants a trade deal with numbers he can announce. He wants Chinese pressure on Iran to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And he wants something on North Korea, a signal that Beijing will use its unique leverage over Pyongyang to advance American interests. Xi wants three things from Washington. He wants relief from the tariff and technology restrictions that have been squeezing Chinese industry. He wants movement on Taiwan. Any softening, any adjustment, any shift in American language or commitment that advances Beijing's long-term position. And he wants to be treated as an equal, not as a problem to be managed, but as the leader of a civilization that stands on the same level as America. Now look at those lists carefully. Trump's most urgent need, Hormuz, requires China to pressure Iran. But China's relationship with Iran is one of its most valuable sources of leverage over Washington right now. Why would Beijing spend that leverage before the summit has even produced what Beijing wants in return? Xi's most urgent want, Taiwan, is the one thing Trump cannot easily give. Any movement on Taiwan triggers alarm in Tokyo, Seoul, Canberra, Manila. It undermines the entire architecture of American deterrence in the Pacific. It hands adversaries a precedent they will use in every subsequent negotiation. Both sides want things the other side cannot easily provide. Both sides are being asked to spend leverage they need to keep. Both sides are walking into a room where the price of the deal they want is higher than what they came prepared to pay. That is the structural problem. And no amount of pageantry resolves a structural problem. The second condition, trust that the other side will deliver. Here is where the history becomes devastating. The October 2025 South Korea meeting between Trump and Xi produced a trade truce. Both sides agreed to step back from escalation. Both sides made commitments. Within weeks, the pattern of tariff escalation had resumed. Within months, the relationship was back under the same pressures that had existed before the meeting. This is not unique to this relationship. It is the documented pattern of U.S.-China summits going back decades. Both sides agree. Both sides announce. Neither side fully delivers. The next summit is called to address the gap between what was agreed and what was done. Xi knows this pattern. His advisors know it. His negotiating teams have lived through multiple cycles of agreement and non-delivery with American administrations of both parties. And Trump's team knows that Beijing has its own long history of agreeing to things in summit rooms that quietly disappear in implementation. Two sides who do not fully trust each other's delivery, negotiating over things neither side can easily provide, in a summit that both sides need to appear successful, regardless of whether it actually is. That is the structure. That is why the experts are saying little more than zero. Now let us talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because this is the most urgent issue on Trump's agenda, and the one where the summit's structural limitations are most clearly visible. Half of China's oil imports and almost a third of its liquefied natural gas transit the Strait of Hormuz. 13% of China's pre-war oil imports came from Iran directly. On paper, China has as much interest in a reopened strait as anyone. But here is what the data actually shows. China has weathered the Hormuz closure surprisingly well. Its gigantic strategic reserves, built deliberately over years, specifically for scenarios like this, have absorbed the disruption. Its overland pipeline infrastructure, developed precisely to reduce dependence on maritime choke points, has provided alternatives. Its non-fossil energy development has reduced the overall oil dependency that makes the strait so critical for other economies. In other words, China planned for this. While American allies scramble and global energy markets panic, and the IMF warns of global recession, China is sitting on reserves, routing oil through pipelines, and watching the disruption damage its rivals more than it damages itself. She can feel, in the words of analysts who study this relationship, rightly smug. That smugness is not accidental. It is the product of years of deliberate strategic preparation. And it means that Trump's most urgent ask, use your Iran relationship to help reopen the strait, collides directly with the reality that Beijing has limited incentive to solve a crisis that is, right now, hurting America's allies more than it is hurting China. Why would you solve a problem that is giving you leverage before you have extracted what you want in return for solving it? This is not cynicism. This is the basic logic of great power negotiation. And it is the logic that makes the Hormuz ask structurally very difficult to deliver in a two-day summit. Now let us talk about trade, because this is where the summit is most likely to produce something that looks like an outcome, and where the gap between appearance and reality is most dangerous. The pattern of US-China trade summits is well established by now. Both sides agree on purchases. China commits to buying American agricultural products, soybeans, corn, wheat, perhaps some industrial goods, perhaps some energy exports. Numbers are announced that sound significant, and then implementation happens. Or rather, implementation does not fully happen. Chinese state enterprises adjust purchasing patterns based on price, availability, and domestic policy priorities that have nothing to do with what was agreed in the summit room. American companies find that the commitments made at the diplomatic level translate into something considerably smaller at the commercial level. A year later, the trade deficit looks remarkably similar to what it was before the summit. Both sides know this pattern. Both sides know that trade commitments made at the summit level are structurally difficult to enforce and structurally easy to underdeliver on without formal violation. And yet both sides need a trade announcement. Trump needs a number he can bring home. Xi needs to demonstrate economic stabilization. So a trade announcement will happen. Watch the numbers carefully. Watch whether the commitments are structured with enforcement mechanisms or without them. Watch whether there are timelines with consequences or aspirational frameworks with flexibility. The difference between a real trade deal and a photo opportunity trade deal is almost entirely in those details. And those details are almost never what gets covered in the summit press conference. Now let us go to the issue that nobody on either side wants to discuss publicly, but that shapes every other conversation in that room. Taiwan. Taiwan is always present. Always. In every US-China negotiation, in every bilateral meeting, in every carefully structured summit agenda that lists everything except the thing that matters most. Xi has 3 specific things he wants on Taiwan from this summit. He wants a reduction in American arms sales to Taipei. Every advanced weapons system that reaches Taiwan makes a potential Chinese military operation more costly and more uncertain. Xi wants that calculus to shift. Not dramatically, incrementally. A quiet commitment to review the arms sales pipeline. He wants American military activity near the Taiwan Strait reduced. The regular freedom of navigation operations, the naval exercises with Taiwan, the intelligence sharing. Each of these sends a signal of American commitment that Xi wants weakened. Not eliminated, that is too obvious. Just reduced, slowed, made less regular. And he wants the language of American commitment to Taiwan softened. The strategic ambiguity that has kept the peace in the Strait for decades, Xi wants that ambiguity resolved in China's direction, not through a formal statement, through the accumulated weight of private assurances and softened public language that shifts the interpretation of American commitment over time. None of these asks will appear in the official summit agenda. None of them will be announced at a press conference. They will be in the private conversations, in the margins of the formal meetings, in the language that is chosen and the language that is conspicuously avoided. And Trump, managing a war, managing a trade negotiation, managing the public performance of summit success, may not fully appreciate in the moment what is being moved in the margins. This is why the experts say little more than zero chance of substance. Not because nothing will be agreed. Things will be agreed. Soybeans will be purchased. Working groups will be established. Language about cooperation will be issued. But the things that actually matter, the Hormuz crisis, the Taiwan question, the structural trajectory of the most important bilateral relationship on the planet, those will not be resolved in 2 days in Beijing. What will exist, on May 15th, is a press conference, 2 leaders, carefully managed statements, the appearance of progress, and underneath that appearance, the same structural tensions, the same unresolved leverage questions, the same fundamental disagreements, waiting for the next crisis, the next summit, the next carefully choreographed opportunity to appear resolved without actually being resolved. Here is what I want you to watch when Trump lands in Beijing. Watch the body language in the first photo opportunity. Who moves toward whom? Who sets the physical terms of the greeting? These things are choreographed in advance, and the choreography tells you something about which side felt more pressure to project warmth. Watch the joint statement language on Taiwan. Watch whether there is any new formulation, any subtle shift from previous joint statement language that Beijing's negotiators spent weeks trying to insert. Watch what American officials say about Hormuz in the 48 hours after the summit. If there is movement toward diplomatic resolution of the Iran conflict in the weeks that follow, something was agreed privately. If there is no movement, the ask was made and declined. And watch China's behavior toward Taiwan in the 3 months after the summit. Military exercises, naval activity, diplomatic pressure on Taiwan's international relationships. If any of these decrease meaningfully, something was traded. If they increase, the summit produced nothing on the issue that matters most to Beijing. The summit will look like progress. It is designed to look like progress. Whether it is progress, you will only know by watching what comes after. Summits create facts, not policy facts, not treaty facts, but psychological facts. Facts about the relationship between 2 leaders that shape every subsequent interaction. When Trump and Xi sit across from each other in Beijing, they are not just negotiating trade deals and Hormuz solutions. They are taking each other's measure, reading each other's tells, understanding, at the most personal level, what the other side is actually prepared to do versus what it is prepared to say. Xi will be watching Trump for signs of desperation. Does Trump break first in the silence? Does he make concessions before they are requested? Does he signal that he needs this summit to succeed more than Xi does? Trump will be watching Xi for the opposite signals. Is there flexibility beneath the composed exterior? Is there genuine willingness to move on Hormuz, or is Xi going to bank the leverage and deliver nothing? These personal readings will shape every subsequent interaction between Washington and Beijing for months, possibly years. If Trump appears desperate, if Xi reads weakness, Beijing will recalibrate its entire approach. It will push harder on Taiwan. It will bank the Hormuz leverage longer. If Trump holds firm, a different signal goes to Beijing, and to every government watching from the margins. The experts are right that substantive outcomes are unlikely, but the signal that comes out of that room, about American resolve, about Chinese patience, about which side read the other more accurately, that signal will be anything but zero. We are watching, in real time, the first serious test of whether American diplomatic credibility can survive a moment of genuine strategic vulnerability. That test begins when Air Force One touches down. Watch carefully. My name is Dr. Adrian Cole. This is Empire Signal. The next signal drops in 48 hours. Stay with us.